Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are watching from. Welcome to Focus on Liberia. This is Roundtable Africa, your favorite program. I am Sekou Kele, your host, and with me here today is my co-host, as always, Edward Amara, all the way from Sierra Leone. And today we are discussing an interesting topic, as always, the latest news from around Africa. We are bringing you live all the latest happening from around the continent. Edward Amara, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Shiku, and I also join you to welcome our fans, both at home in Liberia, Sierra Leone, and across Africa, even in the Western world. We hope to bring African issues and to discuss them, maybe to the awareness of people who have little or no interest into African affairs, and even those who have interest in African affairs, but they are not actually aware of what is going on into Africa. So that why make this program very, very interesting.
Yes, please stay back and watch as we are about to discuss six different topics from six different countries from West Africa, Central Africa, East Africa. We bring you all the latest happening that you missed this week and what's been happening. We will give you all the detail. Edward Amara, without wasting time, we will go to our number one issue here. Sorry. Mali Parliament approved 5-year democratic transition. So the West African country of Mali, we discussed them last week. They have been diplomatic battle with France. The military government have taken over. ECOWAS have laid sanction on them. The UN were trying to put an embargo on the country, and thanks to Russia and China, that was overturned. And there have been a lot of confusion. The opposition party in the country are saying they can't allow the military to stay in power for 5-year transition period. Now the parliament has approved this. There's a document that was going around, and they approved the document saying that it's now legal for the military junta to stay in power for 5 years for the transitional period until there is a democratic election to bring in civilian rule. What's your take, Edward?
The approval of the Malian parliament of a 5-year mandate for the military to continue its leadership, I may say it's a disappointment, but it never came as a surprise. Because the military on our own have been assiduously pushing for them to be recognized as a ruling party like what we are having today in Malaysia, where you have the Tagbandor ruling Burma army. Or Burma or Myanmar, where you have seen Aung San Suu Kyi was sent out of power. Now she's even facing a likelihood prison term. Maybe it's a similar thing that the Malian government want to develop, because since the fall of the late Amandi Tumanu Ture, who was the leader that IBK, Ibrahim Abubakar Keita, actually succeeded, he was actually overthrown. And the military was seen into power because of international pressure, one or two things. An election was conducted, IBK came into power. IBK also fall out when we have insurgent issues going on into Mali. And the military have taken it into their own wisdom that they are the best wing to lead Mali because of how political crisis. And during the fall of IBK, it was like a collaborated effort, because people demonstrated against his leadership on ground that it was corrupt, ineffective, or incapable of fighting against the insurgent into Mali, and he no longer had absolute control over the governance system. In short, yeah, it lost its legitimacy, and they were actually pushing for an independent council like the military to lead Mali. Finally, the people demonstrated. We were expecting the MP5 or the MP6 that took over at least to have granted the civilians an absolute say into the governance. Unfortunately, those civilians were pushed out, and Gelta and his comrades used a kind of, they maneuver everything. Now they have been firmly placed into power. And they manipulated the justice system, because we were expecting, because in governance system, we have three branches. You have the legislature, you have the executive, and you have the judiciary system. But both the parliament.
Sorry, I want to hold you right there. Sorry for interruption. So, what is democracy at this point? Is it the ritual of elections and campaign and political parties? What democracy is, or the opinion of the people? Because we've seen the people in thousands, almost 1 million on the street, supporting this military government, saying that they are allowed to stay in power to carry out a smooth transition. Why should we now go against the people and say we want this ritual called democracy instead of what the people want? Because there's an exceptional case here. The country is under attack. The country is on the verge of being divided into two by terrorists, and they are saying that the military is doing a good job. They should stay for 5 years. Don't you think people should look at it from another angle and say this is the opinion of the people at this moment? Or we should just say democracy is only when we have the ritual of elections?
Well, democracy is about rituals of election. It's a government by the people, for the people, and with the people. Unfortunately, it has its own premises that you enter, because democracy, there must be popular participation, there must be election taking place, you must have India. But these guys never took power. Although one may claim that they are actually ruling with the consent of the people, but that is not the absolute majority of Ghana, of Mali, excuse me, because there are people who are sympathizing with their ideology. So let me take it like it's democracy on their own, because now they are having the consent of the people. But if you can watch on it objective basis, you will understand that they are not actually leading with the popular will of the people. In short, here, there are people still in Mali who are opposed to the military leadership. So if election were to be conducted and they won the election on the free and fair basis, then one would have accepted them to be like a democratically elected government. But now we are seeing like an impulsive government on the people. The government have been imposed instead of being elected. And as I was saying, the parliament now is corrupt, because they are now having sympathizers of, if not the apologists of the military, into the parliament. And even the judiciary system is absolutely corrupt. Of course, the executive is automatically being led by the government. So all of these two wings are vulnerable to the military, which now it's leading the executive. So we may not say it is an illegitimate government. That is, the government is not legitimate, it's an illegitimate one, though it has legitimized itself because of the popular will of the people. But they had time. We are expecting them at least to conduct the election based on the constitution of Mali, and the election will have been conducted in 1 month, 8 year time. Unfortunately, they violated everything. Since the fall of IBK in 2019, what are we seeing? And this 2022 is almost 3 years, and now they have consolidated the power, and they have entrenched themselves through by fraudulently manipulating the constitution. And now, if you do not take time, the next stage, after they have been given the power by the so-called parliament of Mali to lead for 5 years, the next thing that we embark on is to actually change certain clauses of that constitution that will warrant them to stay into power. We should also start to think about, as I mentioned earlier, what is happening today in Burma or Myanmar. We are the military has the power to run for elective position into the country, and there are certain key positions in parliament and in the executive that are definitely placed for anybody who comes into power, be you the prime minister, whatsoever thing. You must at all costs, based on constitution and mandate, accept the military as part of the leadership of that particular country and accord them on those positions, or else they are going to be kicked out of power. And with the Malian situation, we have a volatile political situation where chaos is the order of the day, and the military have used that to their own advantage and imposed themselves into power. So we may not say it's not a democratically elected government, because all those who are in opposition of the military are not they do not accept the military to rule them, but there are people who are actually apologists of the military. So it's not democracy, though we may understand the prevailing circumstances that made them to install themselves into power.
Okay, thank you very much, Edward. Even though I differ a little bit with you to call them illegitimate, so for me, as an Afrocentric Pan-African revolutionary, I look at things from when it comes to legitimacy, constitutionality, or what have you. For me, I look at the overall supreme interest of the people. Because for us in the Afrocentric world, in the Pan-African world, we are social democrat, but we always believe in the supreme interest of the people first. So when the interest of the people is taken care of, then democracy itself is already being implemented. It is now when the people suffer and democracy seems to be in place, because there is a ritual and a ceremony going on, like what we have in the last 50 years in Africa. It's not democracy, because it's now the ritual as opposed to the rule of law itself. So for me, what is happening here, this group of people, yes, the overthrow, I condemn it from the beginning, that I did not support military takeover. But at this moment, they are facing a serious crisis. Apart from the terrorists, here they are facing France. France that came to the rescue, that came to rescue them, to say they are about to collaborate with them as partners to defeat these rebels. This is what the Prime Minister of Mali said. He said when they took over, they discovered three things. One, they found out that there were documents signed by the previous government which prevent Malian soldiers to go on certain territories of Mali without the permission of France. There are certain places in France that the Malian military are not allowed to go to those areas. France will be controlling those areas, and Malians are not allowed to investigate or find out everything. That is unconstitutional. The territorial integrity of the people has already been violated. And now the so-called democratic government was violating the constitution. But because they were quote-unquote legal, nobody was questioning it. Second problem, they found out that there were documents circulating among the French diplomats that the last result of Malian crisis is to divide Mali into two and to give a territory to the rebels, or so-called the terrorists, and then allow the southern part of Mali to exist until they will now live in the buffer zone, and then they will be there forever. So the Malian found out and said, this is a betrayal. We call you to come and fight the terrorists. Now we find it documents where you were trying to divide the country into two, rebels on one side, and then government on the southern people we have the legitimate government on the other side. Then you, France, will be in the buffer zone. He said, this is a betrayal. So look at this. What was the third issue? The third issue was France to be able to control all the financial, the businesses and the financial institutions of Mali, including their mineral wealth, that they will not have a say. France will be controlling everything and be giving them some return. So this is when the military guys find out, they said this is a betrayal. France betrayed our country. The so-called Democrats have betrayed our country. So if we go for election right now, our institutions are not strong. These guys will pick up one of their guys and make him president. And then they will go back to the status quo and will keep suffering. And one of the guys France was trying to bring out to be president is the guy called Bubu or Buba. And this Bubu guy, who was former prime minister, was recently caught having a conversation with Alassane Ouattara. And in their telephone conversation, they were trying to mock the Malian government and see to make sure how they will connive to make sure that Mali system collapses so that the present government will leave power. This is the person who is conspiring against his country, is now supported by France to become the next president after the military. So you see the conspiracy. You see the hypocrisy. The so-called democratic institutions are not strong enough to defend the people. They are collaborating with the West to destroy the nation. That's why these military guys are saying we need 5 years to clean up. We need 5 years to drive France, and we need 5 years to consolidate power and make sure that the election is the right choice of the Malian people and not manipulated by France. For me, as a revolutionary, I take their position for the first time. I say, yes, that's a decision in the right direction. Although I do not support military coup, but when the sovereign, the will of the people or the supreme interest of the people is protected, I support it, whether it be military regime or a democratic regime. The interest of the people is what is important. So that's my own take, Edward. If you can rebuttal that if you want.
Yeah, let me just, I think in as much as possible, I do not tend to disagree with most of what you have said, but democracy has its own philosophy. It has its own school of thought. We should accept that. I think the current Malian constitution is written on a democratic principle and it's based on elective principle, and one could only become a leader of Mali, except in controversial circumstances like what happened when IBK fell. Having underscored that, let's watch at the military. They could be good propagandists. I believe that the military are not actually men, they are not trained to rule. They are trained to defend our country against foreign aggression. But in a situation where the citizens of their country felt crushed by their own governance, maybe the military can come in, and when they come in, they should make sure that they hand over power peacefully, and they should exempt themselves from any political involvement. Unfortunately, the Malian military is using all of these propaganda documents to ensure that they install themselves into power. This is just a one-sided document being presented and popularly claimed by the military. We may accept that, but I don't believe whether they have the political caliber to successfully navigate themselves out of this crisis. We also, just like the government, I think they shouldn't make a mistake like what's happened in Zimbabwe, unlike South Africa, because you watch, we have people who have leadership in different ways. We have people who are leadership who become leader in crisis time. Maybe that is what the military are performing. But when it comes to memorandum of understanding, under normal circumstances, maybe the military is not actually the best way to lead our country. Rather, we should have a democratically elected person whom somebody will not operate into the legislative system, into the judiciary system, or even into the executive under an atmosphere that is definitely injected with fear and threat. Working under the military system, you are going definitely to work there under an atmosphere of fear of threat. And if there is a fear and threat injected into the atmosphere, you tend to say things that are very friendly about the military. I accept the fact that IBK failed the people and democracy has failed them, but the military is not actually the best way to lead them because they do not believe into negotiation. As they have gone ahead and made some arrangement, pre-arrangement with Russia, now you have seen what Russia is doing into Europe. They are having crisis over Ukraine. Do you think that Russia will come and support them on that same background? So all of these things are going on. I am afraid, but I have to confess that the military under these circumstances should be there to support democratic government and protect the people against the oppression of the jihadists. But they shouldn't be there to lead. Because if you allow them to lead, they're going to make sure that the atmosphere in parliament, in the judiciary system, even in the executive, is being injected with fear and threat, and you're only going to say what suits them. You cannot successfully criticize such system. And that is why if you ask anybody who is part and parcel of that particular governance, they will never tell you the real story. They only tell you what is friendly about the military. Or else you risk being kidnapped, even killed, or tortured, or whatsoever thing. These are some of the things. The constitution is legally suspended, illegally suspended.
You have a point there. You know, like you said, democracy has a philosophy, and it has its own rules, guidelines, especially the rule of law. But again, as I said, for me, there are different type of democracy. You know, there are different type of democracy. The whole thing here, the idea of democracy is that the supreme interest and the will of the people is protected. So it's not two-term presidency. It's not necessarily democracy. That's not how democracy is defined. You have places like Germany where the chancellor can stay for 3-4 terms. You have places like Canada here, our prime minister is in his third term. There is no noise. It's a developed country. You have all these type of things. You have Kagame have gone for how many terms? For me, the supreme interest of the people is when that supreme interest of the people is being violated. Even if the person is elected, we can say there is a majority that is being misled, because you can have a foolish majority. You can have an unconscious majority who can just use the democratic platform to send the country to hell because they are unconscious. Populist movement happen where someone who is not really having the supreme interest of the country takes over and then destroy the country. We see these guys, they are on the right direction, and the opinion of the country, if you go on opinion poll, the people are saying these guys are on the right direction. So democracy is that. The interest of the people is protected. Now, if they want to go back to civilian rule, and then they enact a constitution, and the constitution is approved, now they have set a new ball game, the rule of law, then they will follow that. But as far as what we are seeing right now, they are protecting the supreme interest of the people. That's the fact. And the guys who were elected were doing the opposite. They were giving out the territory to France. So for me, that's a violation right there. So that takes us to the second issue. We'll move away from Mali a little bit. Then here we are back in Senegal. We are here in Senegal. Protesters demand tougher laws against same-sex marriage or same-sex activity. You know, this issue of LGBT in Africa, there's two ways I approach it. The first is, why is it that whatever happened in the West become an issue in Africa? Is it that we do not have an African center, or let me put it this way, the language of our revolution, is it the language of the West, or we have our own language of revolution? Because it's like the revolution of Africa, the emancipation of Africans, or the Renaissance language that we have, it doesn't exist. We always, whatever going on in Europe automatically become the public opinion in Africa. If European discuss same-sex marriage, African discuss same-sex marriage. If European discuss it, we should be able to create our own collective consciousness and our own language of revolution. It's not anything that happened in the society of the European automatically become an issue for us. There is no same-sex marriage issue in Africa prior to now. These people have been having it for ages. They've been discussing it a long time. We didn't have that. Suddenly it become an issue because we are not living in our own consciousness. We are living in the shadow and imagination of other people. So whenever they shake, we start shaking. When they say they feel cold, we say we feel cold. We are very unconscious. The continent is so unconscious that even the most educated one is acting like a blind person. This issue should not even be in our public space because it's not an issue. We have problem of roads, infrastructure. We have problems of women's rights. We have problems of bad governance. This is what we should be talking about. Same-sex marriage is not an issue in African society, but they have decided to make it an issue because the media in the West is the one that is being used to validate every information. The second way I approach it is, if Africans should, go about protesting against the same-sex marriage, what is okay. But if they could use the same energy and power to be able to go against bad governance like this, we will have a lot of changes. But because there's a lot of sentiment attached to this thing, they are likely to mobilize people to fight it. But when the things that affect our life directly, roads and what have you, these things, corruption, tribalism, nobody is willing to protest. But these are things like this, they are willing to protest against it. Same-sex marriage is not an African thing. We don't have it in our value system. There is no need for us to even be fighting. Our leaders should not even be discussing it. Like Kagame said, it's not an issue in my society, so why should I even talk about it? What do you say, Amara?
Oh, thank you very much. I think in the first place, let's understand the foundation of these things. LGBT is an imported culture. It has never been part and parcel of our society. But the three greatest enemies of mankind are poverty, illiteracy, and ignorance. I think most of folks who are participating into this particular activity, they are literate, they are not illiterate. But there is something affecting them, which is poverty. I'm not going to say they are ignorant of the fact that lesbianism and gayism is not part and parcel of our culture. But being that they are very poor, they tend to import said culture and use this as a means of survival. Having said that, now we are seeing, take the Senegalese case as an example. Protesters are in the streets demanding for stronger laws against LGBT. Fine, fantastic. Granted that the government accepts it. But look at the current government over there. They wouldn't go as a state against it because the West to tag them are people who are violating the human rights of legally place Senegalese people into Senegal. That could be one. Then, even though Africa, as an African man like me, as an African person like you are against even the institution itself that supports such things like that. But we are seeing established, well-funded international NGO into Africa that are supporting the attitude of LGBT into Africa. But we have never seen an established African institution be sponsored by Africans who are meant there to preach against these such policies. The West have manipulated everything. They have institutionalized different culture into our own institution. Then they have even come with established institutions into this country like in Sierra Leone, Liberia, Senegal, Guinea-Bissau, you name this country, where they are continuously preaching in favor of LGBT, lambasting governments that may have decided to go against principles like this. How many well-funded institutions that are African-minded, on African culture, on African principle, on African philosophy, that are actually preaching against this LGBT? None. And most of those who are protesting, they are poor. Trust me. Protesters like that could easily be bought over when they expose them to certain money. Maybe we have our own culture, but we have not decided to institutionalize our own culture. West have their own culture. They have created institutions of their own culture into our own country. And they are using our brothers, our sisters to kick against the system. Look like what I read one book like Okonko, so most of you already say if a man entered your home and what shit on the floor, what will you do? You take a stick and break his head. Unfortunately, we are not breaking the head of these Westerners. We are pampering the situation because of poverty, illiteracy, and ignorance. We have people, as I rightly said, we have our brothers and sisters who are well educated, but they are poor and unemployed. And this Western institution, because one of the things that they favor people on, we create employment for you. And if they create employment for you, they ask you to preach on those philosophies. So please, if the West, if you want to discourage the attitude of West, then let Africa create institutions, employ people, educate them, sensitize them on the African culture, who will be preaching against the existence of institutions that are empowering LGBT. It's a foreign thing. Like Rani Museveni once said, he said, LGBT or the attitude of gays and lesbians is a land thing. You can also unlearn it. And we are seeing this thing existing in our body homes, in schools. Things like that are happening. Where you are seeing girls from body home, they are practicing these things. It starts right from the school. And we preach this thing into this school. Even our educational system be infected with certain human rights issues that shouldn't be existing to Africa. We have our own culture. Any human right principle that will violate our own culture and tradition, it should be deleted. But it is our African leaders who are supporting the attitude. So how can it end when there is no established institution to preach against the propagation of the right of gays and lesbians in Africa?
You know, I agree with you. You know, when it comes of lack of effort on the part of African leaders to promote African value system, because these people they have come to conclude that we do not have a value to protect. We do not have a value to protect. In fact, there are African intellectuals who have concluded that when they even write books, they describe Africa as a continent of triple values. Like Ali Manzoui, the late Ali Manzoui of I think from Kenya or somewhere there, a very powerful intellectual. He said Africa, a continent that have inherited three values. He said the Islamic value, the Christian value, and the Western value. He said these values, he forget that he's describing a group of people who have their own value prior to this religion. They forget sometimes that we have a philosophy, that we have spirituality, that we have value and tradition in our culture. They are not even thinking of developing them. So they put them aside and then present this African as someone who is a primitive, is now supposed to get value from outside his culture. So this is the way they portray us, and even our educational system. This is the way they portray us in every institution. That's the reason why any culture that comes from out there, it easily enter into the African system. There is no defense. There is no Afrocentric perception to reality. There is no Afrocentric value in your educational system. Do you see Chinese protesting, passing bill for LGBT? Where do you see that? Do you see Chinese passing around that they are protesting whether LGBT should exist or not? No, there is a system. They have a culture, they have values, they have the way they do things. So everything permeates, the value system permeates every system. But we do not have that. Our educational system begins with Greece and Rome. Our value, when you want to talk about God and spirituality, we have to begin with foreign religion. There is nothing African, there is nothing of value about the African culture in any of our institutions. So it's very easy, like you rightly mentioned, the NGO that are established in Africa, all these NGO you see around, they have two primary responsibilities. They are spies. They are also there also to impose Western value as universal values. They believe anything Western is universal, and it's not true. You cannot impose a culture of one people as a universal culture. Every people have lived their own reality in their own terrain, and they see reality from a different angle. These people have turned up inside out, upside down, to a point we don't even recognize who we are. Even I told somebody last time, I said, let's move away from value. Let's even go to even education, or how we even think, or how we even look at time. Let's take the calendar, for example. All of you say January is the new year. Everybody say Happy New Year, Happy New Year. A new year is supposed to be a period where the weather, the climate change. So you come from dry season into a rainy, a wet season, where the plants and everything come back alive, where the vegetation come back alive. That is what you call New Year. New Year means you have come from the winter, or you have come from the dry season. Now you are moving to the season where everything in your environment have come back alive. In the agriculture and everything begin. This is the way people saw New Year. This is how calendar were arranged. That's why Ethiopians celebrate New Year in September. Africa in the southern hemisphere supposed to celebrate New Year from that time. But we just pick European calendar. When they say New Year, we say New Year as if we are living in their own hemisphere, the northern hemisphere. So we see the way they see reality. This is the way we see reality. When they see something upside down, we say it's upside down. When they say it's New Year, we say New Year. How can January be New Year in Africa? But intellectuals don't think it's a problem. They don't even look at the cosmos. They don't even look at the environment to see how does this signify New Year in our environment. Our alignment, our paradigm is not even correct. Then you come to the values and culture. When the Europeans say this has been civilized, we say this has been civilized. We are not questioning anything. And these NGOs are established in our environment, in our communities, and they are spreading these values. And at the end of the day, our own children will come and fight us and say this is the right way. So African governments are struggling, and they cannot be able to contain these things as long as they are not ready to put African value in the educational system and put it out there and develop it to a point where every African understands what an African value is. So when they see anything, they judge it from the perspective of the African culture. If that is not done, we can just keep roaming around. We can be black Chinese, we can be black Arab, we can be black European, but we will never be black Africans.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So this is the way I see it. So we'll take one more topic here before we go for a break. Sudan. I think this is Sudan. So tear gas fire at anti-coup protester at UN expert arrived. So the Sudan issue is still around, Edward. You know, after this coup, for me, always when I look at Sudan, I don't look at modern Sudan. Whenever I see Sudan as someone who loves history, I just have tears in my eyes. Sudan, the land of the Kushites, the land of the pharaohs, the land of Kerma, where African first civilization began. Sudan, the land where the black men ruled the world. Sudan, the land where women, the Kandake, the Amari Shekari, the great queens that rule empires. That's the Sudan that you see. When they say Ethiopia in the Bible, ancient, it's not Addis Ababa. It is the very Sudan that you are seeing. That was the ancient Ethiopia. It is this Sudan that have been reduced to Arabized Africans, terrorizing other black Africans. And these military guys have been so brainwashed. They think that they are Arab. They take instruction from Egypt. They take instruction from Qatar, Kuwait, and they are persecuting their own people. They do not want democracy, because with democracy, there will be participation of every different ethnic groups, because they are not majority. These Arab elite that are leading Sudan, they are in minority, 15%. So they know when democracy comes, the actual black people of Sudan, the Nubians, will take over Sudan, and they will bring a democratic rule, and that will revive Sudanese civilization. They don't want that. This is why they are destroying that beautiful country. People think it's just about military. No, there is a class of culture going on in Sudan. This is the reason why the South Sudanese broke away, because they could not stay in the Arab Sudan. Then now the other Africans still in the Sudan, like the Nuba Mountains, the Nubians, they are being dislodged from their homes. They are bringing Syrians from the Middle East to come and settle in Sudan. They are pushing away the black Sudanese and giving the territory to Middle Eastern people to come and settle on the land of the black pharaohs. This is what is happening in Sudan. It's a clash of culture. The people are being oppressed. They are not allowed to speak their language except Arabic. And these military guys, they represent Arabianism. This is why there is a problem in Sudan. It will never end. So the politics, the little petty politics, the general take over. Me, I don't look at it. I look at the big picture. They are pushing away, destroying Africanity in Sudan. That's why Sudan don't have peace. Democracy will mean the people will, everyone will bring their culture. The Arab culture will be minority, 15%. And that's why they don't want the democracy. What's your take, Edward?
Well, Sudan is a very chronic problem. As you rightly mentioned, Sudanese are known as black people. We are not Arabs. And the Arab today who are in Sudan are Egyptians. It was out of the activities of Muhammad Ali Pasha, who when they are trying to look for slaves and gold, when they did not succeed, they established themselves into Sudan. So you understand, as you rightly say, the Arab mentality into Sudan is taken as an impulsive or imported culture. And now they have suppressed the Nubians, who are the owners of the land. They have now turned into third-class citizens, and they do not have power to the leadership into Sudan. And South Sudan being broken out, it is because of the activities of what is going on in Sudan. We have seen how Darfur has fallen. Now, the military is on the helm of affairs, and a good number of authorities in Sudan are actually Arabs. And most of those military guys, they have Egyptian names and they belong to Egypt by historical link. That is why the Sudanese per se will never link themselves deeply with Africans, countries that are typically African. Instead, they will link themselves with North Africa and the Middle East because they want to protect themselves. Most of what is going on today is being facilitated by Egyptians and people in the Middle East. Rather than any typical African country would tend to fight for the right of black Africans. That is why we have seen the Dinkas and other people who are living today in Southern Sudan. They have managed to carefully emancipate themselves from such things. Now, we may say because there is a difference between democracy and good governance. Although in democracy we expect good governance. But immediately there is bad governance into democracy, the very principle of why democracy was established is being violated. Bashar mismanaged Sudanese affairs for quite a long time. Now, even with his departure, the crew that is present, the military crew that is presently ruling Sudan, belong to that Bashar mentality. And they have the understanding that by any attempt for them to relinquish power to a civilian government, the Arabs are not too much. Maybe through a kind of elected government that will come with the principle of democracy into Sudan. Those Arabs will fall. They will trace them. They and Bashir and others definitely will go into jail. So how do you expect? As you rightly say, it's a kind of racial trouble into Sudan. It's a clash of culture. It's something that is deep ethnic philosophy into it. And they believe that if they can allow democracy to go into Sudan under free and fair atmosphere, where you have anything like fear, threat being devoured out of it, trust me, under such circumstances, the Arabs are going to lose power. And they will definitely hunt them down. And most of what they have, fraudulently taken will be taken away from them. When you watch at Sudan currently, majority of what belongs to Sudan belong to the Arabs. And the most well-placed people, they are the military people, and they are private entrepreneurs who are, in fact, most of the economy of Sudan is being controlled by the military. Private property belong to the government now have been overtaken by those military, and they are overseeing them. They really know the what? They really know the consequences, even the ramification that we follow them should they hand over powers. Maybe it's just the kind of thing you may say Nimesia has fallen out with Bashir, but they really want to take time and how to change over the system. That is why Bashir will never be handed over under the military regime to the UN. He will never. And if he's not being handed over power, maybe they can easily try him and to appease the world. They may send him into 10 or 15 years in prison, even below that. Who knows? They can even free him out of that prison. He could be living in his own home, and they will tell you that Bashir is in prison. So it's a very complicated situation, and I am afraid, but if care is not taken, Sudan may be like any Middle Eastern country.
Thank you very much, Edward Amara. We will take a short break. Then when we come back, we have 2 to 3 more questions or topics to discuss before we leave. So please stay tuned. Don't go away. Thank you for watching Roundtable Africa on FOL, Focus on Liberia. And thank you for watching this show every Wednesday. We are discussing latest news from around the continent. And I'm here, I'm Sekou Kela, the host of this program, with me, Edward Amara. And here is the next discussion that we have here is Guinea-Bissau. The leader say convicted drug baron behind failed coup. So we heard a few weeks ago, a few days, I was actually the president of Guinea-Bissau escaped another attempted coup. And I think this is the second time, Edward, or so. And he said the drug barons are behind this. It's very troubling to hear. This country has been, I don't know, since the 80s. They always have trouble, leadership crisis. And this guy seems to be a breath of fresh air. And unfortunately, we are seeing that there is a conscious effort to remove him. This is the second time now they are trying to get rid of him. And he is saying that this threat is not coming from the army, but it's coming from the drug law, because there's a lot of drug trafficking actually in Guinea-Bissau. A little country there in between Gambia, Guinea, but a lot of drug trafficking that's happening in that country. And he's saying that one of the drug barons are trying to get rid of him. Edward, what's your take on this issue?
Well, he's not too far from the truth. And we all know that Guinea-Bissau is a coup-friendly country. And if you watch at Guinea-Bissau, they have one of the longest coup, over 7 or 8 coups have taken place into Guinea-Bissau. And maybe this latest is one of the few coups that are actually failing to Guinea-Bissau. And it's a transit point. This particular country is more or less like those Colombia. They have actually been used to drugs trafficking. It is just like Haiti, where you have a capital city that the police cannot successfully parade or patrol into that particular country or in the capital city, because at the end of the day, they have well-armed to teeth drugs lords who may have sophisticated weapons than the government itself. The similar situation is about to overtake Guinea-Bissau. And most of those former leaders into Guinea-Bissau are drug warlords. And even the military that he is denying today, he knows exactly what he's saying. And by saying that they, drug lords, are responsible for the attempted coup, he's right. Because they have a greater influence into the military of Guinea-Bissau. A majority of those well-placed military guys into Guinea-Bissau are beneficiaries of the activities of the warlord. Any government that may have a solid attempt to fish them out down, they will definitely hunt you. And you may have certain arrangements, just the way like what we are talking about Moise. In fact, like just like take a common example like Haiti. If you want to successfully operate there as a president, you must have a concrete agreement with those warlords, and their activities may facilitate you to get money and even protect your leadership. Any attempt for you to go against them, you can either risk being killed, being exiled, or your entire family will be wiped out. That is a similar thing that's happening today into Guinea-Bissau. You have people who have been into the military for quite a long time. The military is like a civil service. They have operated under government like Kumbayala and others. They are well-seasoned military people who have a solidified or well-cemented contract with this warlord. If the government comes into power and decide to fish them down, or to fish them out, they will definitely hunt you down. The attack was not being organized by a warlord. It was being organized by well-trained military people who attack the government, put the prime minister and his president under seizure. Maybe he was lucky by then, but he could not be always lucky because they have the solid intention. So Guinea-Bissau situation is a very precarious one, and the activities of warlord have been actually known. And you have Western powers within Guinea-Bissau who knows exactly what is going on there. And the president himself, Embado, is not too much innocent about these things, because it is not the first time that he has been part and parcel of governance system. He's not a new guy. He knows exactly what is going on, and he knows these activities, and he knows that if you fall out totally with this warlord, trust me, you may sleep today and hear that he has been overthrown. So end of the day, what do you expect? He has to go into negotiation, because they have other people within Guinea-Bissau, like France, even Portugal, are seriously parading into Guinea-Bissau, claiming that they are there to hunt this warlord. Indirectly, they are facilitating their activities. And it's another poor West African country. We should also realize that. And most of those government officers are earning more into the activities of cocaine rather than the civil service payment be given to them. And since they are using it as a transit point, they are facilitating it. So it's a well-established corrupt institution with cemented contract with the military, and the government knows that, and well-placed people within Guinea-Bissau, they know that exactly. So you cannot, in fact, it's just like a legal bargain. You know these activities is wrong, but this guy have the power. In fact, it is just take a common example. Let us watch like DRC Congo. If you go against the Catholic, you are definitely going to lose power. Immediately you go against the Catholic institution into DRC Congo, you will lose power. So in Guinea-Bissau, any attempt for you to go against the activities of warlord, your power is gone, because they have the sponsorship of the army, and because they are sponsoring the army with arms and let me not say arms. They are sponsoring, the army is sponsoring them with arms and ammunition, while they are giving the army raw cash, liquid cash, more than the government can even afford to give them. And most of these wealthy politicians into Guinea-Bissau are into it. Look, Honduras. The former president of Honduras has been arrested because he supported drug war activities. So when you watch at Guinea-Bissau, their organogram, most of those top-ranking guys, the tycoons, they know the activities of warlord, and they are beneficiaries of it. So you cannot go against the established institution. I think Mbappe will be forced to negotiate with them, or else his freaks being killed.
It's very, very serious. It's a very, like you said, it's a very, very poor country. You know, very, very poor country in West Africa. They've been going through a lot. And like you said, you can have a drug law in a country if the government, members of government are not part of it. In Nigeria recently, there's a police, the assistant, I don't know, police director of the country, Abba Kyari, who
Yes.
he was seen as a so-called super cop because why? He was one of the person who was seen to be fighting crime. He was very quick in arresting drug dealers. He was very quick in cleaning up crime. So he was considered in the country, he was one of the most decorated police officers. Where did they find recently? That he's a drug dealer. That he was in fact in charge of a drug trafficking network from South Africa all the way to Europe and passing through Nigeria. And he has been doing that for a very long time. And this is the man that has been decorated by the country as the one who fights against crime, as the person who fights against drug law. So you see, the system is not clean. So how do you want to come and just be in the middle of that system and thinking that things are going well? You are surrounded by crooks. You are surrounded by criminals. That's why many African head of state, they forget when they take over government, they think everybody's smiling around them, have the same intention. Sometimes they don't realize that they are surrounded by enemies, that most of the advisors around them are criminals who are ready to take their lives if they try to do things right. So at the end of the day, you either become brave to get rid of them or they will get rid of you. So that's the issue in Guinea-Bissau. I am very afraid for that guy to say he will finish a 2-term. I doubt. If he doesn't change the security, if he doesn't clean the system, purge the system, and really invest into defense and intelligence to be able to provide intelligence gathering and be able to attack them before they attack, they are going to get rid of him before his 2-term is over. So because of time, we'll go quickly to the second to the last issue here. Ethiopia. Ethiopia started electricity production amid tension with Egypt. So finally, the Ethiopian Grand Renaissance Dam is on. They have started, I think, the first phase of it. So Ethiopia have started supplying electricity from the dam. An Egyptian government issued a statement that is unacceptable, that the negotiation has not ended. Ethiopia went ahead and started the dam. They have threatened several times before that they were going to use military action against Ethiopia. People even believe that they are behind the Tigray revolution against the Ethiopian government. So a lot is going on. And for me, really, I will not lie to you. That would be my bias. Maybe you will say because I'm racist or whatever, that's okay. But I support Ethiopia. Okay? I support Ethiopia because the agreement that Egypt is using against Ethiopia is colonial. It's based on a colonial document from Britain that says that Egypt have exclusive right on the dam. How can you have exclusive right to a water that comes from my territory and flow and you are downstream? You cannot do that. It has to be a bilateral agreement, how we're going to share the water, and then we will now be able to make a concession to say, okay, this is how many part of the water that you're going to receive, and this is how many part we're going to use for electricity. This is the kind of agreement that can happen. But all these things, Edward, I think the African Union have failed. The African Union have failed to negotiate peace between Egypt and Ethiopia. They have failed to solve African problems. They have failed to stand for the vision of their founding father, the Pan-Africanism. So if anything happened between Egypt and Ethiopia, definitely believe me, it is the failure of the African Union. I think we have even getting to a point that Africans have to reject African Union. I think African Union has become a colonial organization. For me, I'm going to say that it has become an imperial institution that is even now against Africa, because we cannot understand how an African Union failed to compel Ethiopia or Egypt to accept certain peace agreement. These people are in the same organization. You cannot see infighting between European Union countries like that, except you leave the Union. But you are within the Union, there are ways to resolve issue. How can all of you be within the African Union, but you cannot resolve simple issue of water to a point you are threatening military action against the seat of African Union? So I think something is wrong. Congratulations to Ethiopia. This dam is going to supply electricity. It will lead to industrial revolution, because you cannot have an industrial revolution if you don't have power. If energy is not taken care of, you cannot do that. So they are able to do this, and that was going to fuel a lot of jobs. They're going to bring industry in the country. But there is problem with Egypt and Sudan. If it is not solved, they are likely to run into crisis in the nearest future.
Well, as you rightly said, if you ask me, I think the AU today is operating on a pre-written document probably given to them by the Westerners. I think everything, they have never opposed any decision being taken by our colonial masters. Rather, they are there to support these decisions. I read history, and they will tell you in our history that no Nile, no Egypt, or no Egypt, no Nile, because they will tell you that Egypt is existing because of the Nile. Granted, because Egypt also has her own right towards the Nile. But Egypt should also recognize that the Nile is not only coming out of Egypt, or it's not only flowing to Egypt, there is a route of the Nile, and that particular route is coming from Ethiopia. And Egypt should not exercise an automatic traditional right on the Nile, depriving others who similarly have the same right to it. And with the activities of Ethiopia on the dam, I think they are coming with development in terms of electricity. It is not only going to supply Ethiopia, but other surrounding countries are also going to benefit. And because of the dam that Ethiopia has made or has established, it has even stopped flooding into places like Sudan. But the Egyptians are selfish, they are unscrupulous, they are watching at it with the Arab mentality. And to me, it's an arrant nonsense. We should understand that others similarly have the right to the Nile. And it should be something out of negotiation. I think they are saying that they had expected Ethiopia to have done it in the space of 20 years, but they are doing it in the space of less than 6 years. You cannot control development into another country. It's a Western mentality. You cannot be in Egypt and direct what should go on into Ethiopia. And crazily enough, Donald Trump supported that mentality. I think once he even said he can facilitate Egypt to bombard the dam of Ethiopia. Why should you facilitate an African country waging war on another African country if you are actually a world peace leader? I think the AU is more or less a failed organization, because they would have brought these two. In fact, they allowed the US to be negotiating instead of them, because Egypt protested that they do not trust AU. But this is an African issue. It is being operated on an African soil. Why should you allow you? This is not UN issue. If the issue has been taken to the UN, then the Security Council or other people should decide, or the National Assembly should decide if that is what the case should be. But this is an African issue. We have region and body. We have SADC, and we also have we have the Eastern African Union, and we also have AU and other things. They have that power. But Egypt on her own protested, and they allow US to be negotiating into this thing. I think we just need to be absolutely careful, because both of them are tycoons into Africa. And don't be surprised, maybe, just maybe, Egypt's hands could be in the activities or in the Tigrayan war. Because where are they getting the arms and ammunition? Why are they so strong enough? So all of these things are there. So as time goes by, we may see what is unfolding into Egypt and also Ethiopia. But care should be taken that we shouldn't have two superpowers into Africa threatening themselves. It may create a kind of political instability in both the north and eastern part of Africa. And the north is suffering from the activities of jihadist movement. And we're also seeing in the east, the Somalia is not safe, Sudan is not safe, and Uganda is also suffering from another one. And we have seen how East Africa have suffered from a lot of other atrocities. So if the north is not safe, the Horn of Africa should also be infected with such trouble. West is also facing their own problem, even Central Africa. So Africa is just totally corrupt in terms of political chaos, bad governance, and whatsoever thing.
Definitely. We expect the new generation to look into a different direction. The AU, so-called AU, have failed. For me, they should do away with that organization and reform a Pan-African organization. This African Union is just a joke. It's a joke. They can't even solve a common crisis. When they just get dictated from Europe, and they get dictated from all the other countries. Recently, they wanted to add Israel as an observer to the African Union. For what? A country that we have experienced colonialism, we've experienced apartheid, we've experienced everything. Then you know the problem between Israel and Palestine, then you guys want to make Israel to go become an observer here. You can do that. You should have principles. Okay? There is no interest there at all. So for me, African Union is a joke, and they are not really willing to help the continent. And they are there. It's a club, like Julia Malema said, is an old men club. They meet and drink and sit down and protect each other. It's a club of old men who are retired and destroying the continent. That's what African Union is. It's not a union that has vision for African, vision for Pan-African movement, vision for the liberation of Africa, industrialization of Africa. They have no vision. And we cannot trust these people to lead our destiny. So that takes us to the final question here, Edward Amara, the final discussion actually. Liberia. Why the Liberian opposition collaboration, alias the CPP, failed? You know, this is my country. Liberia, we always knew that the opposition was not united. We knew it from Ellen time, first of all. Let's go back a little bit. When Ellen was in power, the current ruling party, CDC, tried to form an alliance with all these other parties, Belanda, Uri, and other. That union failed. It didn't work out. Now that we are got into power, they also tried to come together to collaborate, but somehow people were seeing some hope because they were able to come out with a framework document. They had a leadership structure. Everything was going well until two people, Joseph Mwakai and Alexander Cummins, decided to put their interests above the interests of the Liberian people or the philosophy of the organization that they found themselves in. What was the philosophy? What was the goal? What was the mission of the CPP? Remove George Weah from power. George Weah is a good man, but he is not good enough to lead the country. He does not have the capacity. He does not have the understanding to rule a nation. He's a good celebrity. We love him, but he's not a politician. He's not a technocrat. He has no understanding in running a state. It's obvious to the deaf. It's clear to the deaf, and I don't know, they say visible to the blind, and then audible to the deaf. Everybody have seen it. George Weah cannot manage the country. What do? Let's try to mobilize, create a strong institution, collaborate, and try to make him a one-term president so we can take the country to the next level. Okay. We have done, you guys have put up all the framework document together. Joseph Mwakai, you are an old man. You were vice president of a failed regime, a regime that failed the people. You want to be president? He said, yeah, he has to be president. Kumi said, no, I'm coming from the corporate world. I have experience. I've never worked in government in Liberia, so I do not have any scandal. I can do it better. Okay, is there a way the both of you can sit down and have concession? Can there be some kind of a concession agreement for the supreme interest of the goal and the love that you guys have for Liberia? If at all it was the love for Liberia and not for personal interest and power, then you will sit down and make concession. Okay, my man, I go one term, then you take over. Or this is what is going to happen. Put the interest of the philosophy and the interest of the organization, the love for Liberia first, before your personal interest to become a president. But they didn't do that. What they did was either I'd be the flag bearer of the party or the party has to die. The collaboration will either die or I become the flag bearer. This is the way two of them, it was a do or die affair. So two things we learned from there. One, the opposition does not love Liberia. They love power. They do not love Liberia. That's one thing. Two, if any of these groups from the opposition defeats George Weah, their leadership will be as chaotic, if not even more than George Weah. Because we've seen what they've just displayed. All of them right now, as we speak, they are in court fighting each other. There is a lot of legal problem going on in the country just for just little collaboration that you have, not just ruling an entire country. So for me, that's my takeaway. These people don't love their country. And also, they are now, if they eventually win, they are going to be chaotic. They will not rule the country very well. That's what they just demonstrated. And that goes to both ways, Kumis and Mwakai. Personally, I love Kumis. But the demonstration that they show here, he and Mwakai, I gave up on both of them. And I think they have given a free passage to George Weah to continue for another 6 years. There is no way about it. But this old man, Mwakai, cannot defeat George Weah. He cannot. Okay? And Cummins by himself cannot defeat George Weah. So it's very clear. The way has been clear for George Weah to continue. The opposition have failed. We have to dream again for a new generation to fight after Weah leaves. That's my take.
Oh, thank you. I think I follow closely this issue. First of all, let me say kudos to the Liberians for having rejected both the coalition and George Weah ruling coalition in the recently conducted election. None of them could not win a seat. That tells you that the people are disappointed. They lack the trust and the hope, especially the political change that would have reflected into infrastructural change and the betterment of Liberia. Now we are seeing almost to a failed politician coming ahead with Cummins. I carefully and clinically listened to a JNB interview with the BBC sometime back in last year when he was being interviewed on this coalition and his political contest against Cummins because of the flag bearership. He was declarative into his statement, and a resolute old man stating categorically clear that he is the best thing and the best person to lead the coalition. So indirectly, it was a clear message to the world saying that without him as the leader, there is no coalition. Though George Weah may not be politically capable to handle the Liberian issues, because throughout his life he has been a celebrity. He has never been into a tough political leadership like this. He may be a good man in heart, but maybe the position is too tough for him. It's a tougher one. And those around him have not solidly solved the Liberian situation. Rather, they have compounded everything. And if you're having now a coalition that have failed from the onset, how do you think they can manage to unseat George Weah? No, they can't. Because incumbency in Africa is one of the factors that can lead you to winning an election. And for you to unseat an incumbent president into Africa, you must have a ground coalition. JNB is a well-established political, he is leading a well-established political party because they have led Liberia as one. And having led Liberia, it means they have an ample amount of support, even though they lost the leadership to George Weah. So if Cummins and JNB would have accepted and put Liberia first instead of themselves. But everything that I'm seeing is themselves. They are so unscrupulous. They are not naive of the current Liberian situation, but they are just unscrupulous, greedy, and self-centered. Because it's the Liberians that they want to exonerate from the shackle of corruption, from the shackle of poverty, backwardness, illiteracy, and other things. So they would have understood that one person must lead. Of course, JNB, to me, he is living on borrowed life, and he's no longer suitable to lead Liberia on a basis of watching at the Liberian situation. What they need an active leader. You cannot be a sleeping president in a mansion. You must be active. You must be alert. You must be capable of doing such things. But his age is no longer. He may have the mental caliber. He may have the experience, but his age is no longer in agreement with the current top job into Liberia. His age is no longer, it's not compatible with the current top, because Liberia needs a strong person, a both proactive and reactive person, an energetic person with a robust system who can easily navigate the system. Not an old man like him. Maybe Cummins could be a good leader, but he also selfish and maybe not that powerful negotiator. Because I was expecting him more to use his influence and not come with a divide and rule system, but actually, like when JNB and others were having a kind of meeting that would have decided the leadership of the party, he was out of Liberia. He said he went on in personal business, and JNB confirmed that on BBC. That is a clear indication that the coalition was not working as a force. And the recently conducted election into Liberia exposed their weakest nature. I even tell you that if a strong coalition can be formed into Liberia, trust me, George, we have a lead. But without a strong, because he also lost, nobody could win an election. Instead, other political parties who are not renounced went on to win the election. That is a slap in the faces of both George and that of JNB and Cummings. What they do, they are deceiving Liberians. I think Liberians need to think twice and try to have a political party that can spare the affairs of Liberia. Not electing JNB, maybe Cummings because of one or two things. People are watching at him in the other way. But if you really want to become the leader of Liberia, then he should be an empowered negotiator, a good one who has the mojo to cajole people, not a divide and rule system. In fact, it is possible that in time of political organization, people must differ from your own mentality or your way of doing things. But instead of trying to divide the system, come, because you can even, I believe in one philosophy: befriend your enemy. You can even do business with your enemy as long as it's to achieve your goals. It's a political goal. In politics, you do not have permanent enemies. You have permanent interests. You can be an opposition today. I can be your minister, whatsoever thing. So you have permanent interests, not permanent enemies. And you can even do business with your enemy as long as to achieve your goal. Maybe he failed to do business with the enemy for him to achieve his goal. And this is what that have compounded the situation, and everything has escalated. We are expecting the tension to de-escalate. Unfortunately, it has been politicized, and because it's already a politicized thing, but now it has escalated and led to the division of the party, giving George Weah the upper hand in the future election.
Thank you very much, Edward Amara. You can also add your final comment there, as we run out of time. Your final comment, please.
Yeah, I think I actually love the show now, the way we are doing it now. I think this is actually going to market our wider listening populace anyway, because the other time we are understanding that most of our followers belong to Liberia. But that time I was going through our comment, I saw a lot of other people from different countries, those other countries that are touching, because like today we discussed up to 6 different countries, and as long as somebody has listened once to us, they will also tell them their colleagues. So when we are coming with different country issues, maybe things like this will be fine. And we promise our audience that all this will be coming with latest interesting issues that are pertinent to Africa's development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Edward Amara. Also to our listening audience, if you feel there's something important in terms of politics, economics, education that you want us to discuss on this platform, you can post it in the comment and suggest a topic to us. We appreciate it very well. You can suggest it, and then you just type it in the comment and we're going to see it. Also, if you think you want to come on this platform and you have an idea to share, you want to come and make some analysis on issues, you can also write in the comment section and then just tell us how to contact you and say, I want to come on Roundtable Africa to participate in this particular discussion. And then we will also contact you immediately, and we'll make sure that we explain the rules to you. Then you can join us on this platform to discuss the things that matters to Africa. We are very grateful to our listeners. Thank you always for joining Roundtable Africa here at Focus on Liberia. We appreciate your contributions and your comments. We will be here again next week, same time, to come and discuss the issue that matter to Africa. For us, it is the African Revolution. Until Africa is free, we are not free. And the freedom of Africa is the salvation of the Black man and woman. So thank you very much for listening, and we say bye-bye.
We are Liberia. Liberia is our home. Liberia people.